are now in our third book. So before we even start, let's just applaud for our third book, guys. Herodotus, book 1. Now, I guess before we start getting, because I feel like what we should do first is like narrate what goes on in book 1, and then like talk about like his writing style. But I think before we do all that, just like a superficial review of it. Like, what did you think of book 1?
I thought it was pretty easy to read, actually.
Yeah. There's some instances where I have to reread again, like some instances, but it's not like some other texts where I'm reading a whole paragraph and I'm lost.
Like, I found the language to be not as complicated as the ones before, as like the Iliad or like the plays, probably because Herodotus probably didn't care if it was particularly poetic or not, just as he got only to get the information across.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I thought it was very good. Again, as you said, we haven't really seen much like it. I think the closest we've gotten to this kind of writing is maybe Homer, where there's a lot of names you gotta remember. There's like a lot of locations. They're just, sometimes it goes on for long. But what's nice about this, as Paul alluded to, the writing is easy. It's easy to read. It's just normal text. He's telling you what's going on. He retells what's happening. And there's some instances that I do like where a lot of things that he's discussing are hearsay. So some things might be rumors that he's heard, and he says, okay, it's like this is a rumor, but I'm not going to delve into it.
Oh yeah, I wonder which part's a rumor, you know?
Yeah.
I wonder which part.
So I pretty much agree with you guys, and I think even though we're only on book 1, I think I'm already getting the reason why he's called the father of history, because we know from his biography that he was a guy of well means. He was from a well-off family, and that is what enabled him to like travel to Egypt, to Babylon, right, modern day Iraq, into a bit of Iran, and throughout Greece and Turkey, right?
And no, that was really hard. Much harder back then.
Considering that the guy could have died from disease, right? It's not like modern day where you're vaccinated and also you could live till you're 80, right? And there was no paved roads. Well, maybe there was, but not in the traditional
only
sense.
Like in Greece, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, like only like if there were roads, it would only be between cities, like basically.
Back then, before like industrialization, there was still a bunch of animals living in these areas, like lions.
Boars.
Lions used to be extremely present in that area. Sorry, Paul.
And boars.
Boars. So for him to accomplish this and finish the text too, I think is a big achievement, and it goes to show like the passion that this guy has. And I think like the fact that wealth can afford you to pursue your passions, right? He doesn't have to work for a living. Herodotus could have pursued his passion of traveling the world and getting these accounts.
And I do think, by the way, like this is a small tangent. We're probably gonna see that a lot in like all the writings here, because I'm pretty sure most of the writings are probably made by relatively like people who don't have to work every hour of every day.
Yeah, they're from the elite of the society. That's how they were able to afford this education. That's how they were even afford to be able to read and write.
Yeah.
Like you said, let alone be able to talk about physics and metaphysics and right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys realized it, but there isn't just a map at the end of the book. Herodotus has his own maps halfway through it.
Yeah, that's what I've been discussing. That's what I've been looking when he's been naming.
Awesome. I only realized like halfway through with my reading, but I caught on very fairly quickly. So I think we should start with like where book 1 starts, right? So before he even tells us what's happening, he states that my name is Herodotus of Halicarnassus. I am writing this for the purpose of explaining to you guys the deeds of the brave and the great of both Greek and barbarian, so that they are not lost through time. We're getting the sense that Herodotus is like, he thinks of himself pretty grandly, he's completed this grand journey, and this is his purpose. He wants to preserve like history.
Oh, one thing, I watched like the overly sarcastic production video, and apparently it started off as like a traveler's guide, but then he started talking to a lot of people, which like enabled him to make it that way, which would start making sense when he starts describing the landscapes randomly throughout the book.
Like he'll literally go through a story. We'll talk about that.
He would also talk about the cultures as well, right?
Yes.
Especially near the end.
Yeah. So we start off with Io and Europa, kind of obviously mythological, but Io and Europa, and how Europa ends up becoming Europe and all the European people coming from there, and Io, right, is going to Asia. And he goes into like a little story about how the Phoenicians, who were in the region, would kidnap the females of Greece. So in retaliation, the Greeks were also kidnapping the females of the Phoenicians, correct? And then it eventually and then when Helen got abducted by the Trojans, that he's also explaining like the Trojan War background. But from a perspective we didn't think of before too, right? Because when we read Homer in the Iliad, we had the feeling that the Greeks were going to Troy just for Helen, but I think also Herodotus offers some context outside of it.
Yeah.
Would that be fair?
I do think like a difference would be like the Trojan War. Well, like there's definitely some like historical aspect to it. Like the city existed, there was war, it was ransacked, but like it's also a story as well. Like the deal is a story like embellished, and I think Herodotus is like trying to make it more like, okay, well, obviously like maybe it happened like that, but like, let's actually like look at like a historical lens of it, you know?
Yeah. And in the context of like, so he would ask the Phoenicians, right? And I think the Phoenicians would say, oh, they ransack us and take our women, but he doesn't realize that also they took the women of the Greeks like as well, right? So, and this is also going to be, I think, a powerful theme, is that because he's asking other people of these events, there's bound to be embellishment and there's bound to be bias in this as well, right? When he goes to the people of Persia and tells them about their history and their rulers and where they came from and their perspective, there's always going to be some embellishment based on what they say. So he talks about that for a bit, and then we go to Lydia, right?
And he talks about Croesus. Well, like he talks about the line, and but like only one person that kind of really matters in that line
is Croesus.
Yeah.
But in almost like an Oedipus like type of way, right? Croesus' ancestor is the bodyguard of the previous one of the earlier kings of Lydia, right? That earlier king tells that bodyguard that I want you to look at my wife while she's like naked.
Mm-hmm.
And he refuses. But then he tells him he has to do it because I'm your lord. He does it anyway. And he sees his wife, and the wife convinces him to stage a plot with her to kill that old king and take power for himself, and that's what he does. And almost like Oedipus Rex, the sins of the ancestors will be reverberated through the generations.
Kinda more like all the generations were like
Skipped.
but like they were skipped. Like they didn't really go into much tragedy. They kind of just like did like a brief summary of their life. Like some were tired, some just kind of ruled whatever they were doing. But then like it went down to Croesus, which oddly enough he was actually portrayed as like a pretty decent person for the most part.
That's really, really decent.
Yeah.
So before we get to Croesus, but in the middle of him talking about how Croesus' line gets established in Croesus, is there anything in between? Or does he go to Croesus from there?
There's like I think like he started off with obviously like you have to go into like detail of the founder. So like they went into detail for that. I think like they got into a bit of a detail with the one after the founder, because like from what I can tell he's the one who started most of the wars, I think, or it might have been one of the other generations. I know like a particular generation started like multiple wars, and then but I don't really think they went into detail with that.
Yeah. So we get to Croesus, who's like arguably the most important person in this book.
No, second most important.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, and we learned a little bit about Croesus, right? We learned that he has two sons. One is deaf and dumb.
Yeah.
And the other one is perfectly good and able. And Herodotus tells us a story about how the able one got killed, right?
Yeah.
Croesus had visions, which made him think that his son was going to die from an axe. Was it an axe?
Iron.
Yeah. An iron. So when his able-bodied son grew up into a man, and he wanted to go out and fight, he would always prevent him from doing so. Then a stranger comes in, right? Tells him about a boar, right? A beast.
Yeah.
That's ravaging the countryside. And we do, like you said, Paul, we do get to know about Croesus' personality because he offers people to help them, right? He offers like a seer or a stranger, right?
Oh yeah, there was something. Like there was a guy who like accidentally killed his brother and was banished from his place, so he went to Croesus' place, Lydia. I'm pretty sure
Lydia.
Yeah, Lydia. And then he's like, hey, I kind of like did an oopsie. Can you like make sure? Can I stay here? And Croesus, he's like, yeah, sure, why not? I forgot that vision. Like the boar came out, and the son like was done with it by this point. He's like, it's a boar. Did I say I was gonna get killed by a tusk? No, I was gonna get
iron.
Killed. It was iron.
Yeah. It was iron, Dad. So trust me, nothing wrong is gonna happen to me. And he's like, okay, go. And the guy that accidentally kills his brother accidentally kills him.
And he kills himself right afterwards because he feels bad.
Because of the shame. And so Croesus is left with his son that everyone thinks is like cursed, right? And the oracles say like he'll never talk, right? I think like a seer, somebody says he'll never talk. So take that out of the picture. And at this point, the empire of Cyrus the Great is coming up. They're an up and comer in the region. And Croesus sees that Cyrus is out there. And he wants to go to battle, but he's not sure what the outcome's going to be, right?
The Oracle.
He goes to the oracle. Actually, Herodotus goes into detail about how they were going to multiple oracles to find which one was correct. And I think Herodotus included the story in there, probably because it was given to him as an account. But I think it's also important to notice that that procedure of finding the right oracle, I think, is to show us that they're not con men. Obviously, we know that oracles and all that it doesn't exist, but at that time, right? Like they could have been con men, but the fact that they did that whole selection process, they told, like Croesus told them, I'm going to do something that they would never guess. But if they guess it, like he said, he's going to be near the water, right, or the shore, the beach, or something like that. And if they guess that, then they're the right ones, and nobody else guessed it except Delphi.
I do want to talk about like the oracles later after we want to talk about the book as a whole.
Yeah. So he goes to the oracle, and he's like, I see the Persians over there. I want to go to war with them. What's the outcome going to be?
One great empire is gonna fall.
Yeah. It's like it's so good. It's such a good line. He like Croesus doesn't bother to ask which great empire or any sort of the specifics. And I think that whole of like, so Croesus obviously thinks that the Persians are gonna fall and he'll be victorious.
Yeah.
Which I think is like analogous to how as humans we're given a piece of information and we sifted through all our little biases and the ways we want to believe it to get to our preferred conclusion, right? And it also, so like when we get what we want, when we're given a piece of information that sounds good, it may not be for us, but if it's vague enough, we'll interpret it to mean us. You know what I mean?
I obviously whatever. Let's just spoil it right now. Croesus just loses.
He has to find an ally.
Spartans, I think.
Yeah, or that, as they're called in the book a lot, Lacedaemonians.
Macedonians, and I think that's more like of an area because he does like
because of Paul's Sparta in Greece, like a modern name for the province that Sparta's in
is from the city.
And it's called Laconia,
okay.
which is similar to what Herodotus says, Lacedaemonians. Yeah.
Well, like that's usually like this. That when he says that, it's usually like as a group of like nations or city-states.
Yeah. Sometimes he'll mean the Spartan. It's kind of like how because Argos, right, had such a big reputation that if you were Greek, you were also called an Argive. It's kind of like that though. But like Spartan, you could also replace it with Lacedaemonian. It also would mean somebody who's not from the city of Sparta, but in that province as well. But generally speaking, he means it to mean Sparta.
Oh, but funny enough that Herodotus does touch upon that. Like Argos is the only city that can actually be that's actually used as a synonym for all of the Greeks.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, exactly.
He did touch upon that.
So that's actually where I got it from.
Yeah,
from there. So, well, he and like you said, Dylan, he it's like a grand story, but he'll stop to talk about other, like the origins of like other details. So right, when he gets to Sparta, right, when he gets to which ally should Croesus pick, it's between Athens and Sparta, right? Mm-hmm. Athens at this time was not strong and was like not a good power, basically. Whereas Sparta were great military, but at the time they were going through a war with the Argives, right? And he was explaining the backstory of that. And again, like Herodotus will stop to tell the backstories of the intermediary characters in this grand narrative. So he eventually picks the Spartans. Mm-hmm. But the Spartans refuse.
They refuse, but then I'm pretty sure like it was Spartans and another person in another group. So like they just looked at the battle, but not doing anything. The battle still happens. Croesus loses, and then the Spartans and the other group fight.
Yeah. Wait, they fight, Paul?
Yeah, the Spartans and the other group fight, and I think there's 300 each, and only 3 people survived.
Oh, 600 and 300 survived.
Was it 3 people that survived or 300 people?
It was 300. No, it was 303 people that survived.
Yeah.
So no. No. So they were fighting. There was 600 people. The 300 left and told them that they won. But the 3 people stayed, right? So the people who stayed claimed that they won because they stayed, and the 300 people claimed that they won because there were more of them, 300, and they came back, right? So both sides were claiming victory in different ways, using different like justifications. Yeah.
Which is funny to me. It has like literally no bearing on what happens here on out. It was just a detail.
It was just a detail, yeah. Which and like you can tell that Herodotus loves the details. Very into that. He would stop to talk about a huge tangent about the people that Cyrus, let's say, invades, where they come from, etc. We'll go into that.
I will note, we're skipping so many things, because like between each of these points, there's like always I need to explain why there's a certain city somewhere, or like a small tidbit of the city. He would always do that.
Yeah.
Like he did this multiple times. So yeah, we're skipping a lot.
Oh yeah, and of course I forgot that Croesus would give enormous gifts, and Herodotus would always say whether those gifts are still around or not.
Yeah, he does do that a lot.
Like this gift is still at the temple of blank in there. You can still see it today. It's in sometimes they'll say it's in the treasury of Corinth, the treasury of thieves or something like that.
We should actually check if those churches that still exist actually still exist now.
Yeah, it's worth checking the archaeology to see like how right Herodotus was.
So because like I have no doubt that those still exist at his time. Over 2,000 years have passed.
Yeah.
Something might have changed.
Yeah. And he's going around 430 BC, and just for context, Cyrus is about 100 years before that. Then it's Darius, and
Then it's Xerxes.
then it's Xerxes, and then it's Xerxes, and then by the time Herodotus is talking about it, Xerxes' son is ruling. So it's worth noting that. Croesus loses to Cyrus, right? He's chained up. He's put on a pile. We assume are bodies. They say it's a pile, but we're assuming it's a pile of bodies. And he's telling, like, he's like shouting, like he's like talking to like the gods. He's like, why did you do this? You know, I'm so good, and you said a great kingdom would fall. And I think Apollo comes down, right?
Yeah.
And he says it's because your ancestor took the crown. This is a punishment
And-
for what your ancestor
And it
did.
did say that Apollo tried his best to convince the fates to do something else.
But he only bought them 3 years.
He bought him 3 years, but he also bought him like, yeah, we won't let you die just yet, you know, because he was allegedly by Apollo supposed to die there.
Yeah. And then Cyrus sees that, and he's like, shit, I can't kill him. If I kill him, I'm gonna be cursed, right? And he says something about insecurity. Insecure is the man. So yeah, Cyrus. Oh yeah, we completely forgot about Solon. When Solon comes, the Athenian, and Croesus wants Solon to tell him that he's the happiest man ever.
Oh yeah, that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
that is the case. But
And I completely forgot about that guy. Sorry. And Solon is talking about like Croesus asks him, who's the happiest guy you've ever met? And he tells him about a story about this one guy who fought valiantly in battle. He had many sons and died.
and grandchildren
And grandchildren.
and he was buried like by his sons.
Yeah. And then Croesus is he's very annoyed because I'm the king. I invited you here. I would expect you to say that I'm the happiest. So he says, after him, who's next? He talks about another story that's not him. Eventually, he's like so impatient and pertinent. Excuse me. He tells him why, how come I'm not one of the happiest men? Because you're still alive. You haven't died yet. You haven't your life hasn't ended. So how can I evaluate your whole life, right? And Solon also goes to saying that people who die valiantly in battle also he considers them to have lived a happy life as well, right?
Yeah, there's one thing I am curious is, I'm not sure if that's what Herodotus thinks or that's just what Solon thinks, because there is like a very blurred. I'm not sure what Herodotus thinks, to be honest. Because like a lot of it is just like words of other people.
Solon, no one while he lives is happy, and talks about happiness is people who die valiantly in battle and who have many children. And I think Solon also talks about something that being wealthy doesn't necessarily make you happy. It's more like the sort of valor that you live. So I think is an important note. But fast forwarding to where we left off, before I cut back to Solon. So Croesus is about to die, but Cyrus hears what Croesus is saying, right? Cyrus, hearing from the interpreters what Croesus had said, right? And Croesus said, one I would give much to see converse with every... Cyrus caught the sounds and bade the interpreters to inquire Croesus of who it was he called on. They drew near and asked him, but he held his peace, and for a long time made no answer to their questions, until at length, forced to say something, he exclaimed, one I would give much to see converse with every monarch. Not knowing what he meant by this reply, the interpreters begged him to explain himself, and as they pressed for an answer and grew to be troublesome, he told them how a long time before Solon an Athenian had come and seen all his splendor and made light of it, and how whatever he had said to him had fallen out exactly as he foreshadowed, although it was nothing that especially concerned him, but applied to all mankind alike, and most to those who seemed to themselves happy. Meanwhile, as he thus spoke, the pile was lighted and the outer portion began to blaze. Then Cyrus, hearing from the interpreters what Croesus had said, relented, bethinking himself that he too was a man, like Cyrus was also a man, and that it was a fellow man, and one who had once been as blessed by fortune as himself, that he was burned alive, afraid moreover of retribution, and full of the thought that whatever is human is insecure. So I think that whole whatever is human is insecure. It could be Cyrus sees himself as insecure maybe because he's human.
I think it's more like there's always, as long as you're human, there's always going to be any kind of danger that could possibly that could possibly kill you. I don't know what to notice.
Yeah.
And I think he's maybe seeing himself obviously these are historical figures, but at least there, from I can guess, it's like he sees himself in Croesus a bit and saying, "Huh, this guy like was kind of in my position right now," and he's kind of like screaming, and he's like, maybe there's some use to him at this point."
So he bade them quench the blazing fire as quickly as he could and take down Croesus and the other Lydians. Then the Lydians say that Croesus, perceiving by the efforts to quench the fire that Cyrus had relented, and seeing also that it was all in vain, eventually, like, I think Apollo calls in rain to quench the fire because what the men were doing to quench it wasn't enough. He lets Croesus live, and basically Croesus agrees that he's going to serve him from now on, right? Mm-hmm. And Croesus sees that the Persians are plundering Sardis, the capital of Lydia, and it's so brilliant what he says, right? Because he's like, what are they doing to Cyrus? And Cyrus is like, they're plundering your city, they're taking your riches. What are you talking about? They're plundering your city. This is your city now, they're plundering it, you know? And he also explains to him that if you allow some of these men to take this wealth, they'll no longer need you and depend on you, and they will be the wealthiest man will be the one to revolt against you. And Cyrus is so like bewildered and caught by this like wise advice that he stations sentinels at the city gates to make sure nothing is taken.
No, wait, that's not exact. No. He asks Croesus, "Okay, what do I do?" And then he's like, "You can't just take it from them because like they'll just revolt by this point. But if you tax them, like by the guards around the gates, they'll think it's what's left is theirs."
And I think that's extremely interesting because let's not forget, Cyrus just fucking took his kingdom, just took his city, right? Croesus could have just shut his mouth and just slowly allowed Cyrus to be overthrown. Instead, he tells him the wise thing to do, which I think goes into like how Croesus is like a very honorable person. And again, it makes me go back to Oedipus Rex. Like Oedipus is like a pretty he's a decent guy, but he's caught by circumstance, and that was caused by the sins of his ancestors. You're saying,
yeah, like Oedipus, like he's like a pretty good person, but he was also like in a very bad situation. But like as we saw in Oedipus Cause, even though he was in like the worst possible situation, he did the best he could by that point.
Cyrus the Great, right? Like the Emperor of Persia, he tells them, why are you sacking the city? What do you mean? I'm sacking your city. I'm taking your riches. It's your city now. Why are you sacking your city? And convinces him not to do it, right? And we were saying like he could have just shut his mouth, allowed Cyrus to sack the city, because if he did, some of his generals would have been really, really wealthy. And as Croesus says, if you get wealthy, they won't rely on you, and they'll think they're hot shit, and they'll just overthrow you. So don't do that. And what happened afterwards? So after that, oh, by the way, right, his blind and dumb son finally talks. He's about to like, his dad's about to die, and he says, "Stop, it's Croesus, don't harm him." And he ends up getting killed. But again, it shows like how Croesus is really, really nice, because even at that time, his blind and dumb son was still alive at that point, and was still like given like a place in his kingdom.
What happens after that?
We get a backstory of Cyrus.
Oh yeah.
Right, we get a backstory of the Medians. So we find out that like the Medians were like an Iranian people who like they were a kingdom once, and then they fell apart, and then they became a bunch of like separate towns, right? And this one guy who was really, really just and really good at managing and administrating and being like really just in like courts of law, they appoint this guy their leader. He ends up refounding the Median Empire, and over the generations they end up expanding until we get to this guy Astyages. And Astyages has, up to this point, his lineage only had sons. But then Astyages has only a daughter. And he gets a vision, right? He gets a vision that someday his grandson's going to kill him and overtake his throne. So he's very, very paranoid, obviously. So he sends his daughter away and marries her off in Persia, far away from Media. Media's like Iraq, Iran, whereas where he's sending him is like deeper into Iran, like far away, relatively speaking. Thinking that if she's away, even though it's still in the kingdom, but if it's away, he won't be in proximity to me to like take my kingdom. But then he has another dream, and it still says that he's gonna take the throne and all this. So he gets hyper paranoid. So even though he marries off his daughter to that Persian prince, the baby, that's Cyrus, he takes the baby, right? And he goes to like his general, his boy, and he's like, "Kill this baby. I can't kill the baby because in our culture, if I kill my kin, I'm cursed. So you gotta kill the baby." And he takes the baby.
And he's like, "I don't want to kill the baby."
He goes to his wife, right? And he's like, "Baby, I gotta kill this baby. I gotta kill this baby, baby." And
he's like, "I don't want to kill this baby."
If you haven't read it, it's like, what the fuck is he talking about?
That's actually kind of what happens.
Well, I kind of heard of it, but I've never read the book.
So she's like, don't do this. Even though it's technically the right thing to do, right? Because he's saying like it's technically the right thing to do because if this kid comes into power, I'm toast. But I will get fucking cursed because it's royal blood. So what does he do? He goes to like a cow herder. He's like, kill this baby. Your king commands you to kill this baby. You have to kill this baby. I'm gonna come in 3 weeks. You can leave it in the mountains to die, but I'm gonna come in 3 weeks. We're gonna go to where you left it. If I don't see a skeleton or a dead baby corpse, I'm gonna get rid of you as well.
No, it's 3 days.
Oh, 3 days or 3 weeks?
3 days.
3 days, okay. So he gives it to the cow herder. Simultaneously, cow herder has a wife too, right?
Who's giving birth?
To a stillborn kid. To a stillborn kid. So gives birth to the kid is like not alive, right? He goes home and he's like, I got this baby. And then she's like, oh, sweetie, like our kid that we were gonna have together, like, it died, it's stillborn.
Talk about plot armor. I know this is technically history.
This is history.
This is technically history.
Like there's prophecy in this history.
Technically history.
So he's like, baby, the fucking general came and he wants me to kill this kid. And she's like, no, it's like a baby. It's a little baby. It's a kid. I got an idea. Our stillborn kid, you're gonna leave that in the mountains. You're gonna say that was the grandson that you got rid of. Like the real grandson, we're gonna raise him secretly.
Well, like they just say it's theirs.
Yeah, and it's funny because Herodotus says, because in the story, right, they reference the name Cyrus, like the cowherd couple reference the name Cyrus, but they don't give the name Cyrus. He says they don't give the name Cyrus until later officially, so that's how you know the story's bullshit. Because the official name is already in there. Like somebody said Cyrus's name before they even, like the couple said Cyrus's name before they picked his name in the story. It'd be like, imagine if like, oh my god, this kid Costa, and then later on in the story, it's like, we're gonna name this kid Costa because we're just gonna name the kid Costa, and nobody knows that Costa is like the true born, but like his name was referenced like earlier when you guys didn't formally pick it. So that's how you know the story's BS, no? Okay.
No, I think like, that's just for like the namesake of the story.
Yeah, I guess. So anyway, they're like, we're gonna have Cyrus, and we're gonna raise him in secret. Years later, right, in the village, Cyrus is such a badass, he's such a Trump, that he's such a Trump.
That he outs himself.
I don't like Trump, I'm just saying.
He
He's
outs
such a
himself
Trump.
without anything. He just outs himself as just being so good at leadership. And they're like, that like, he even like even the nobles like...
No, hold on, Paul. So all the classmates elect him like their king. And because now he's elected king, he's doing kingly shit. So he's got a guy that does his letters for him. He's got a guy that does his administration, his military, his fucking stewards. Okay, but one of the kids, and this kid elected him, right? All the kids, as far as we know, elected him king, but one of the kids, that kid elected him king, by the way, but he still didn't listen to him. So you know what he did? He fucking whipped him.
A noble kid, by the way.
A fucking 10-year-old. They're 10 years old. Kid whips him. And like you said, it's the son of a nobleman. And actually, it's the legal advisor for his grandfather, but you know, the grandfather doesn't know that that's his grandson, and vice versa, right? So the kid goes to his dad, he's like, Dad, this fucking cowherder's son, man, he whipped the shit out of me. Do something. And he goes to the king, right? His grandfather, quote, secretly. He's like, but this kid whipped my son. He's like a commoner, and he whipped my noble kid of noble blood. Do something. And so the grandfather calls in everybody, right? Calls in his secret grandson, Cyrus, his dad, the cow herder, and then the noble kid and the noble kid's father. And they all go into the palace. And the kids, and like, he knows the one side of the story, but then he asks Cyrus for his side, and Cyrus is explaining to him, like, listen, all the kids may be the king, especially even that kid. Maybe, like, he wanted me to be king, he wasn't listening to me, so I had to do what I had to do. I had to whip him. I had to whip him. But we're talking about like BC standards, before Christ standards, so that's okay, right? Because he's king, right? So
this is still technically history.
Yeah, this isn't history. This is imaginary fiction. This is the grandfather's like, fuck, this guy sounds like a fucking king, and he's 10. And as I recall, 10 years ago, I told my boy to get rid of like my grandson. He tells the noble kid that got fucking whipped and his dad to like leave, right? They're irrelevant.
And then through a bunch of machinations, they figure out Cyrus is his grandson. And also, this becomes later reported on. I'm pretty sure the kid's son, the son who got whipped, is actually a guy who was supposed to kill Cyrus. It's his son. And he invites the guy. So Cyrus invites the guy to a party,
yeah,
you know?
His general boy that he told him to kill him, but instead pass the kid on to the cow herder, right?
Yeah. And Cyrus gets the guy's son killed and feeds it to his father.
But like legit, he's like, listen, I know I told you to kill my grandson 10 years ago, but now that I see him, I'm glad you disobeyed my orders, Robert. I'm glad. Because
Robert.
That's not his name. That's not his name.
I'm glad you disobeyed. It was something H. I forgot. It was something with his H. Hierarchus.
Or something like that.
And so he tells him like, listen, I'm glad you disobeyed my orders because my grandson's still alive. So I'm gonna show you a feast for you and your family. Make sure your kid comes in early. We're gonna hook him up nice. Okay? He's like, cool. It's amazing. He comes home. He's super excited. Tells his kid about it. His son comes in the palace first. Fucking kills his kid the moment. His son comes into the palace. And like Paul said, man, he gets rid of his head, gets rid of his hands, gets rid of his feet. The rest of the body, he cooks it. Night of the feast, everyone's having steak, cows, you know, the good stuff, the healthy stuff. The advisor, he's fed his own kid, but he doesn't know it. He eats his kid
And
without him knowing it.
And Cyrus is like, hey, how did it taste? He's like, damn, this is pretty good.
I'm full.
Then he shows him his son's body parts.
The head, the severed hands, the severed feet. He's like, don't ever, when I tell you an order, you do it.
And then he had the gall to look. He's like, are you mad? No.
And now he's figuring out what to do with Cyrus. He goes to his, back then, there were superstitious people, right? Before Christ people, right?
Yeah.
He goes to his fortune tellers, his oracles, you know, the psychics. And he's like, what do I do with my boy, with my grandson? Let your grandson live. Why? It's the dream. I had 2 dreams in the past that said he was going to overthrow me and kill me. And he was going to be king. Yeah, he was going to be king of the playground. Of the playground. He's not going to overthrow you. It was just so what did they say? It was like a wishy-washy one, right? Did they say anything like that? Am I getting the wording wrong or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So let him live. Because I think by the dream they meant king of the playground. Like they meant it as a, you know, not real king to overthrow you. So he's like, okay. He sends his grandson to live with his real mom, right? The princess and his Persian noble dad. He grows up, becomes a young fit man. The general that was supposed to kill him, but his son ends up getting fed to him, right?
Seriously, he's still mad.
He's still mad, right? It's weird though.
I wonder why.
Yeah, it's weird.
Why
It's
would
weird
you
that
say
he'd
that?
still be mad. So he's like, shit. His fucking grandson is like mature now. He's like in his 20s. He's got muscles. He's like he's been getting a reputation for being a good commander and a good leader. Why don't I get, and the Persians at the time are under this empire. It's called the Median Empire. It's like, why don't I get the Persians? Why don't I get him to lead the Persians to revolt? So he writes him a nice little letter and sends it to Cyrus.
No, that's not exactly.
Oh, no.
There was something, because all the roads, because he still doesn't want anyone to contact him in case there's going to be a revolt. So here's what he does. He writes a letter, he gets a bunny, he like literally cuts the bunny open, puts the letter inside the bunny, stitches it up.
Still alive.
And then,
No, it's dead.
It's dead. Has a hunter go to Cyrus to bring him the rabbit. So he can.
He has the rabbit over his shoulder. It makes him look like he was a hunter that just caught a rabbit to eat. Like to hide the letter in, right? It's kind of like how like if you're like a drug dealer in prison, like the baby mama hides in like the baby's diaper. It's kind of like it's kind of like that.
So and that's how Cyrus gets the letter. He gets the letter saying, "Hey, we all hate this guy. If you revolt, everyone's gonna back you,
including me. Yeah. Like I'm general of the army. I'm gonna let you like I'm gonna like not send the troops against you. We're gonna like join with you against your grandfather." And Cyrus is like, huh, okay. So he has to find a way to like whip the Persians into shape to want to revolt. So he takes a bunch of them, and he's for a whole day he gives them backbreaking labor. Like they're toiling the soil, right? They're digging stuff. They're doing backbreaking work in the hot Iranian sun, right? And it was like they were tired the whole day, no rest, nothing.
Oh wait, this is actually important. The Medians are Greek, the Persians are Persians. So the Persians weren't necessarily seen as like free people back then. Like at least to the Medians.
According to Herodotus, they were underneath the Medians, but modern archaeological research I think is saying that it wasn't the case, or not exactly the way Herodotus described.
That's what Herodotus
describes. Yeah.
So he's saying in the end there's also like, I kind of want to say racial, but I guess.
Yeah, it's even back then. I know it's translated, right? We don't know ancient Greek. We're not reading in the original ancient Greek. It's translated by a British dude. So to what extent he included his own, like, because back then he translated in the 1800s. 1800s nationalism was a thing where different ethnic people were considering themselves into ethnic groups and having their own countries, like Lebanon, like Greece, right? So, but who knows if back then they still thought like ethnically like today, or the translator just included that in there. But I don't think so. I think like Britannica, I don't think they get translators that are biased. I think even back then they saw themselves as different peoples that spoke different languages.
Yeah, I guess that.
Yeah. one day, so he tries to get Cyrus is getting the Persians to revolt, right? He's trying to get them that mindset. So what does he do? One day, backbreaking labor. The next day, full feast. We're talking about dates, olives. We're talking about wine. We're getting them stupid drunk. We're getting like a big feast full of good food. The whole day. Relaxation, party time, the whole day. And Cyrus afterwards, he's like, listen guys, out of the 2 days that I gave you, which one was the better one? Well, how was the first one? Tiring, backbreaking, hard. How was the second one? Amazing, luscious, great food. I loved it. If we revolt against the Medians, I assure you we're gonna have, all your days are gonna be like the second day, like today. If you don't, I will make sure that all your days are gonna be like the first day, like yesterday. Backbreaking labor. So he whips them into shape. They start revolting in modern day Iran, Persia region, and they start marching towards the capital. His grandfather's such a retard, in a panic, he makes the guy whose son he fed to the general of the army.
He signs him.
He panic makes him the general. It's like if Trump panic made Barack Obama the general, right? So he's like, fuck off. Gets him out of the throne. Cyrus comes in, and the Persian Empire starts. The Median Empire is ending. The Persian Empire begins. And then he talks about the Ionians. He talks about a bunch of the Greek peoples that were living in modern day Turkey, right? So he's talking about the Ionians who were living in like Smyrna, a bunch of the coastal cities. He's talking about the Iolians who were a little bit farther north, and the other peoples that are in farther south, like their histories and all that, and how some of them left for Sardinia after the Persians came in. Some stayed and got conquered.
Not very relevant for the rest of what it is, but he goes into depth randomly for whatever case.
And that's why he's called the father of history, right? This was the first book where like he was writing a systematized history of the region. So he was going into every single people. Even though he was telling a grand story, every person that was in the story, he would go into like what ethnic group they were, their history, like, and all that. And if you were let's say your family was important enough, your family's history, your family's origins. There's a lot of like Croesus, son of Dominicus, grandson of Plebeius, like that. Even though you'll never hear of Plebeius again, you'll never hear of Dominicus. He's just saying, like, who's your dad? So because back then that's how people knew you, by who your dad was.
They didn't have last names back then.
Didn't have last names. Patriarchal society, right? Nobody's saying Costa's son of Costa's son of like Mary. He's like, no, we want your dad's name. We want your dad's name.
Anyways, should we like skip when he just goes into detail because book one is about Croesus and Cyrus.
Yeah. So pretty much, he leaves like that kingdom that he conquered, right? Whose king he is now like his slave / advisor. He leaves that city. He lets a native guy from the city rule it, but then there's like a bit of a mutiny. He sends like Cyrus sends that general that betrayed his grandfather to come in. He leaves. A bunch of cities pass him around.
And he leads specifically towards Babylon, which becomes important later on.
Yeah, he talks in depth about Babylon. Babylon has gigantic. Was it Babylon or Nineveh that he was?
He still wanted to go towards Babylon, so he sent the general to deal with the revolts on.
No, like when Herodotus was giving that description of that Mesopotamian city, Paul, was it Babylon or Nineveh? That big one where he's talking about the walls and where the Tigris and Euphrates flow and what's built on where, how they build their houses.
I don't think it was Babylon because Babylon.
Okay, it had to be Nineveh.
Because Babylon's like much more to the east,
which is like who ended up being the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Yeah, it's a whole thing. He also goes into depth about the different customs of each people, right? For one, he says like they meet up in like a place of worship, and like the guys would like just pick one of the pretty girls. If they wanted them, they would put a coin on their lap, and they just got them. No, and if you were ugly, you would have to. If you're an ugly chick, you'd have to spend in that place for like years because nobody would want you, right?
It was also like a bidding system as well.
Yeah. So, which is nice. Like he goes in depth about other people's cultures and all that, and he makes judgments on them. He'll say this is a most shameful culture. This is a pretty cool thing. That's a pretty shit thing.
There was one actually interesting thing I don't know if it's true or not, but we did say that the Persians, rather than going for the father, they say the mother's name instead.
Yes.
That is like very interesting because I'm not sure if that's actually true.
Yeah, like it's worth. Yeah, who knows? But
no, this is all again. I have to remind you, this is not technically history.
He's using a fucking mythological story in his history book, though. So anyway, he's done with like the Mediterranean, Levant, right? He wants to expand now into like Central Asia. We're talking about modern day Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, that place.
I will note, he does go into detail how each of the cities that revolted got reconquered. He does go into detail, but we don't want to talk about it.
So he meets this kingdom, and this kingdom's weird. You know why? A woman runs it.
He does conquer Babylon in like a few pages.
Yeah.
Let's skip that. It was interesting. They're not important.
So this queen is like up top in that Far East kingdom, and he's wondering how to conquer her, right? And there's this river that like separates his kingdom from hers. So all his generals, he tries to invade, it doesn't work. The queen sends him a message saying, listen, man, you want to battle? Let's fucking battle, but let's have some rules. Tell me if you either want to battle on your side of the river or on my side of the river, and let me know. All his generals were like, oh, we gotta do it on your side of the river because you would have home field advantage. No. Croesus, he used to be the king, he overthrew him, Cyrus. He's like, no, don't do that. Because let's say they win. They're in your territory now. All they can do now is just push deeper and deeper into your territory. Whereas if we're on their territory, if you win, you continue into her territory. If you lose, you have to go back, and it's a river, right? It's not easy to cross, especially if you have guards like there. It's not an easy thing to cross, right? So it's like a natural defense. So you're better off having the war there. But this is how you should do it. You should set up camp on your side of the river, take your best men, go over there, but where you have your worst men, keep them with like the tents on your side of the river, have a huge banquet with like wine and good food. That kingdom will cross to your side of the river, kill your weaker men, but they'll see all the liquor and good food, they'll get drunk and get stuffed, they'll be so weak and you'll come back and you'll slaughter them. And that's exactly what happens.
And one of the people is the queen's son.
Right, takes one of the queen's sons captive. And later, like he kills himself first, then she finds out, or she finds out, sends a warning, then he kills himself.
Finds out, sends a warning, then kills himself.
Then the son kills himself, and she sends him a message like, oh man, you wanted my kingdom? I'm gonna have your fucking blood, bro.
Oh, and also afterwards, before they get into the big battle, Cyrus has like this prophetic dream that Darius is going to become the king of the Persian Empire.
And Darius is like his nephew, a grandnephew. Yeah. And it says like Darius is like a human, right? Obviously. He's going to have one wing that extends all into Asia and another wing that extends all into Europe. Fucking poetic, huh? So he's like, shit, I have to get rid of Darius. He calls up his uncle. He calls up Darius' father, which is like his like cousin or something like that. Cousin. And he's like, listen, I'm afraid your boy's going to go up against you. He's like, my boy? You? Never. You're the fucking monarch, bro. He would never do that. Let me find out what he's doing right now, actually. And in that time, Cyrus ends up getting killed.
No. Before that, no, he just sends him away.
Sure.
Yeah, he just sends Darius away.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I got the details screwed up there.
And then they had like this huge epic battle. It was awesome. Plenty of people died. And Darius.
And Darius fell. The queen.
And Cyrus fell. My bad.
Yeah, Cyrus, like the queen's army slew Cyrus, and that's the end of chapter 1. That's only chapter 1, my friend.
Yes. No. We were talking about it loosely, but like from Croesus all the way till Cyrus, that's like 50 years, I think.
Yeah, around.
Mm-hmm. Like it's not like we're talking about a short period of time. It's just that like he kind of has to do. Yes, like since it's history, you have to like skip over a lot of details.
Yeah, there's a lot of time skipping in that.
Yeah, basically he covers the entire Greco-Persian War, right? The 300 and Zack Snyder with like Jared Butler and his abs, like that's in there, and like the Battle of Marathon with like the Greeks. And Darius's men and Xerxes' men, he's covering all that. So yeah, I mean, it's a good first chapter. He strikes it hard, man. But at the end, right? At the end of that whole epic story, he's like, this, out of all the accounts of Cyrus's life, this is the one that's like most intriguing, most worthy of note.
So there's still like other things. Like,
there was like other ones, but he like picked the prophecy one. He's like, yeah, this is the greatest. This is like the best one.
It's the most interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the best one ever. So I wrote it in there.
So there's one thing I want to discuss about. That one time a guy was taken over by pirates and by like some pirates.
Oh, the musician.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then he was thrown off board and gets saved by a dolphin.
Yeah.
That's true.
Technically history.
Yeah.
This is technically history.
I think he said like we're either gonna kill you or you jump off yourself. He said before I jump off, let me play you some music.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we loved it so much, and then he's like, okay, I'll jump off now. Jumps off, gets saved by a magic dolphin.
Technically history.
But I see why he's called the father of history, because he goes really into depth about the peoples. Even though he's presenting these mythological parts as history, he's never saying that this is true. He's just saying out of all the accounts, this is one that's most interesting. Or sometimes he'll say an account, he's like, but there are other accounts, but we haven't confirmed it yet.
Yeah.
So like, here's like a very like important thing. All of these accounts, I'm pretty sure, are like he just asked people about.
He asked people around.
Like he didn't like actually fact check them.
No, he would just go up to he went to Egypt, right? He just go up to the Egyptians and be like, what's your story? What's the story of your people? Where do you say you guys come from? What's your religion? He'll like something. He'll observe the customs sometimes.
And like it would be very important because he always talks about temples because superstitious, and rather than saying, "Oh, this is like the temple of Ra or something," they'd say, "This is the temple of whatever group you are, Jupiter or something like that."
This is the temple of like Memphian, because there's a Greek city, an Egyptian city called Thebes, the Theban Jupiter. It'd be like if you went to India and you saw Krishna, like this is the Hindu Jesus.
Well, even though that's ridiculous, that's exactly what it is, though.
You go to like Scientology and you see L. Ron Hubbard. That's like the Nike version of Jesus. Like, it's like if Elon Musk and Jesus were together.
Elon Musk, that's Jesus. That's Moses right there.
So anyway, what do we think of his writing style, guys?
Very easy to read.
Easy to read, epic stories with like some like food for thought things, right? Croesus being wise, or like Croesus, like he gets a vague prophecy, a kingdom will fall. Thinks that it's going to be the Persians, but when he goes to war, his great kingdom falls, right? But like we were saying, like you hear something vague, but if it's positive, humans will interpret it to mean something good happening to them. If it's something negative, they always assume they're biased to think it'll happen to somebody else.
So here's what I'm pretty sure is the case. Honestly, I don't think oracles actually predicted shit. I don't believe they're.
I don't think any of us do.
They don't exist. But here's the thing. I'm pretty sure since I doubt they took that much into account, or like if they did, some of it eroded or they just misplaced it or somewhere. A lot of it is oral. So like through that oral history, the history changes.
It's embellished.
It gets embellished and it gets more storyified.
Yeah.
And then that's why we see that's how even in history, it shows, oh, there's clear foreshadowing. This was clearly going to be the case. Probably not in real life. So, in the end, like what Herodotus is telling us, is their version of this was Cyrus was 100, 200 years before?
100, yeah.
100 years before Herodotus.
Wrote it, yeah. At this time, Xerxes' son, not Xerxes, his son is running the empire.
And hell, we all know oracles were real. Not that they could predict anything, but oracle as a job existed.
Yeah.
So they probably thought, oh, oracles are real, and they say actually correct things. So be like, okay, yeah, this makes sense, and they wove it into the story.
It's oral, but also we have to keep note. Herodotus, I don't think says he believes this. He just says this is what they say. That's it. Now, obviously, later historians would not include these sort of mythological things. I think Herodotus was just trying to write down what people were telling him, not really giving a damn whether it seemed logical or feasible or not, right? Because after that whole epic thing we told you about Cyrus, at the end he just says, out of all the accounts of Cyrus's life, this is the one that's most intriguing. So he's able to know that there's different accounts on this, but this is the one that sparked me the most. He's not saying it's true, he's not saying he believed it, it's just saying, again, the one that sparked him the most. And like we were saying, a guy, he was well off, right? Came from a well-off family, and that's what enabled him to travel around the Mediterranean, around Mesopotamia and Iran, at a time where you could have, without vaccines, right? You could have died, could have gotten eaten by a lion on the way to Babylon. Everyone at the time was not making any money, barely working for a living, and this guy has the luxury to travel around and ask people their stories and write it down.
Yeah, it's funny, the way we talk about the oracles, it's similar to fortune telling. Where, again, a lot of fortune telling, you could say, oh, they're just saying something, it doesn't mean it's true. But there are some fortune tellers that accurately predict what's going on, so maybe that could be how the ancient Greeks, how they viewed oracles, where they thought it was important enough to say, okay, they predicted something, or they vaguely predicted something that ended up being true.
Well, yeah,
so it's in the same vein as that.
In a world without science, and in a world that seemed really dangerous, right? No consistent food, right? No vaccines, kids high mortality rate, right? It makes sense that people would pray to these deities for some sort of safety, right? Or in the case of the Greeks or peoples at the time, if they thought something bad happened to them, they thought it was because they had an ancestor that did some evil shit. They didn't think it's because they maybe did something wrong or made a mistake, or maybe it was just random, right? It's more, for them, it's more plausible to believe that it was somebody else's fault. But of course, if something good happens to you, you take the fucking credit. So I find it interesting that he's including that in there. Also, he looks at different cultures, and I think even in there, he writes that the Greeks borrowed the goddess Aphrodite from the Phoenicians, or something like that.
So.
Yeah. So just also interesting to know where some of the Greek deities come from. They were borrowed by other cultures.
Also, one thing in the translation, they're using the Roman gods, not the Greek gods.
Not the Greek.
Yep.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I talked about, maybe we could talk a little, like a tiny bit more about happiness, like when he gets Solon, like that Athenian visitor that comes to Croesus' kingdom, and he's asking him who's the happiest guy in the realm, thinking it's gonna be him because he's like this dope ass king with like all this wealth that invited him over, and he's like, oh yeah, that one dude, he died like bravely, right? He killed a bunch of folks, he died bravely, he had like grandkids and a lot of kids. It's like, okay, after him, who's the happiest? Oh yeah, that other dude, yeah. And he's like, what about me? He's like, bro, how can I say if your life is happy enough? Your life hasn't even ended. Yeah, your life has to end for me to evaluate your life and see like overall if it was happy or not. That's literally what he says. And he says like you have to die valiantly in battle, and even if you have a lot of wealth, doesn't mean you're gonna be like happy and yeah.
Well, there's one thing I want to talk about, and it's the way he tells history. Because I think modern times, the way we tell history is like these people or like this group of people, and sometimes when it comes to very people in power, they would say this person. But here it's like exclusively they say this person did that. So like I think it's like much more personalizing the story to like the rulers of the realm.
Yeah, more the individual people than just like grouping the whole culture up as just like an entity.
Yeah.
So like I think like that's
although sometimes it does always when he's talking about the peoples, but
Like,
he'll talk about who leads them. Yeah.
Well, like it feels more like rather than saying these people believe that, it would be like this person did that. So like it's much more like he does tell the history, but like from the lens of the rulers rather than from the lens of like the people themselves, which makes sense back then because that's what people would remember, the rulers.
How do we know he didn't tell the commoners, and the commoners were giving this story? Like, what made you think it was from the rulers?
No, I mean like everyone sees it from the lens of the ruler because that's.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because like that's like, but that they're clearly the most important.
And like the ruler's story, like Croesus' story, Cyrus' story.
So when they talk about states, they don't talk about like how we talk about the history now, like these people did that. It's Cyrus did this.
Yeah.
Croesus did this.
Like nowadays we might say like Churchill led the British, but it's still like the British, like in the British forces and yeah. Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
So like that's like an interesting way of seeing this because like maybe like I'm not sure if we're gonna see this in the great books. Well, like if everyone else like starts looking at history like from nowadays, or like historiography being done nowadays, it would probably be less like a gray man theory-ish.
Yeah, more like systems and peoples. Yeah.